Welcome everyone. Welcome our Facebook Live audience. Welcome to everybody in our Zoom room. Welcome to our January Manitoba Book Jam. My name is Anita Darren. I'm a Winnipeg author, actor, producer, and your host. I reside in Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples. It is also the homeland of the Métis Nation. Tonight, we also welcome Danielle Somack. She is an emerging teen writer taking part in Creative Manitoba's Rural Writing and Publishing Mentorship Program and will kindly provide assistance with hosting duties tonight. Speaking of kind, our thanks to McNally Robinson Booksellers, which has generously provided, again, a $25 gift certificate, which we will draw for at the end of tonight's program from our Zoom audience attendees. Thanks also to the Manitoba government and its shiny new Safe at Home program. A Safe at Home grant means we're able to offer a small honorarium to each of the artists presenting tonight. We are here to celebrate Manitoba books and authors and a Manitoba musician. Tonight's presenters are Jonathan Ball, S.M. Biko, David Yon Fuller, Adam Petrash, Darren Ridgley, Craig Russell, and our musical guest, Alana Levandoski. They are all contributors, the authors are all contributors to a collection of short fiction called Parallel Prairies, Stories of Manitoba Speculative Fiction, published in 2018 by Enfield and Vicente, and edited by two of tonight's authors, Adam Petrash and Darren Ridgley. Its back cover teases us with "The Canadian prairies teems with life, not all of it of this world." This will be a fast-paced 1 hour. Hold on to your hats and a favorite beverage. Let us begin. Jonathan Ball writes stranger fiction, horror, science fiction, and fantasy influenced by experimental literature. He teaches creative writing and hosts the podcast Writing the Wrong Way, showing writers new ways to work and create innovative art that stands out. His most recent work is The Lightning of Possible Storms, a collection of linked stories published just last fall. Jonathan will read from his story, Judith. Please welcome Jonathan Ball.
So this is, again, from the story Judith, which is in my book, The Lightning of Possible Storms, but it was first published here in Parallel Prairies. Judith. Scott refused the machines, but then Judith, who wanted to go skydiving, who found a company that would drop them over Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, where they could see the ocean, volcanoes, and lava fields on the way down, and then land just beyond this glorious but hazardous scenery. A beautiful, once-in-a-lifetime thing, the perfect way to begin a honeymoon. Scott balked. What if something went wrong? Ashamed to survive the wedding, only to die on the honeymoon. She didn't laugh, so they fought. Too risky, too worrying. She wasn't worried. They'd book it now, he'd have a year to worry about it, but then they were jumping out of that plane. And if something happened, nothing would happen. But if he was so worried, he could ask the machines. He stalled. What machines? You know. She lit a cigarette. She was quitting as a wedding gift, but not for another month. The death machines. They drew some blood, analyzed it somehow, and spat out a piece of paper explaining how you would die. No one knew how the machines worked, but they worked. They were never wrong, though frustratingly vague. It'll ease your mind, she said, when it doesn't say skydiving or something like that. You'll see there's no reason not to go. Say a gunshot or choke, and if it was, well, then she'd give up, and they wouldn't go. Although it wouldn't make any difference. If the machine said skydiving, skydiving would get him in the end. But he didn't want to know. Everyone wanted use, but although she didn't think you could escape your fate, she avoided public transit. She was right, he was afraid, but he denied it, so they fought some more. In the end, though, he gave in. The perfect wedding gift. And though he couldn't admit it, she was right. He wanted to know. We were in all the malls, so Judith took him to Polo Park. She let him pick something from Victoria's Secret as a thank you for agreeing to go. He asked what it was like when she went. She twisted her purse strap. I'll be honest, at first it's terrible, a real shock. You want to know more, the machine won't tell you more. If you do it again anytime at any machine, it's always the same prediction. He was distracted and anxious all day, so she told him jokes and smiled her best smiles. He thought about the lingerie tied against her tan thighs and how happy she'd be in the air, the lava fields spreading beneath them. They shopped and ate some pizza while they moved in a narrowing spiral around the mall's death machine, putting it off. He felt sick, and the pizza made him feel sicker, and he decided to stop putting it off. The machine looked like an instant photo booth, black and orange like some child's toy, but marked with a gray image of an ancient stone face, a Greek mask of Apollo painted on the side, Apollo's face severe, his mouth a gaping O. Thick, dark cloth hung over the booth's entrance. Scott parted the black and stepped inside. He hadn't told Judith, but it was his second time inside this booth. When the machine was first installed, he came to it alone before they met. He waited for a long time. The line stretched halfway down the mall that day. And when his turn came, he sat inside, looked at his hands, and went home. Now he looked up into the mask of Apollo, also painted inside the booth on the wall in front of him. Apollo's flat eyes stared into his own. A wide mouth, a black hole that he was meant to put his hand inside. Judith swept back the curtain and leaned in through the entranceway. She kissed his forehead, then swiped her credit card through the payment slot. Scott stuck his hand into Apollo's mouth. Something jabbed his palm and he pulled his hand out. The machine whirred and a small slip of paper appeared from a slot to his right. It was done. He couldn't believe it was over so fast. He looked up at Judith and down at the paper. He picked it up and turned it over. Some blood from his palm soaked into its white edge. The paper said, Judith. He stared at the word, his mind blank. His first thought when thoughts came was to hide it from her, but he had looked at it unbelieving for too long. She dropped the laundry bag and staggered backwards. The curtain slung down to separate them. He crumpled the paper and rose, her name in his throat. But by the time he made his way out of the machine, she was gone. Thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right. Welcome again, Facebook Live audience. We did have a little technical difficulty. I will be doing a little adjustment before we post the video. Glad to have you here. Samantha Mary Biko, known professionally as SM Biko, is a Winnipeg-based artist, author, and editor. Her young adult fantasy novels include The Lake and the Library, Scion of the Fox, winner of the 2018 Copper Cylinder Award, and its sequels, Children of the Bloodlands and The Brilliant Dark. Biko is co-editor of the original comics anthologies Gothic Tales of Haunted Love and Gothic Tales of Haunted Futures. Her short fiction has been anthologized in Gush, Menstrual Manifestos of Our Times, and tonight's featured collection, Parallel Prairies. Biko is also the artist and writer for the webcomic Krampus is My Boyfriend, which won the 2020 Aurora Award for Best Graphic Novel and was nominated for the 2020 Joe Shuster Award for Best Webcomic. She lives in a home she's dubbed Sky Woods, which backs onto a forest and prairie field with her husband, son, rescue dog Sophie, and too many plants to count. Samantha will read from her story, The Uncanny Road. Welcome, SM Biko.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for having me. I couldn't find my paper copy, so I'm reading my ebook copy. You can also get the book in all those formats. So I'm going to just start kind of in the middle. Girl on a Greyhound bus heading from Winnipeg to Brandon at night. When they pulled into Portage la Prairie, the bus lurched so hard, Kate was nearly thrown into the rainbow patterned seat ahead of her. Dazed, she blinked around, trying to reestablish where she was. Her dreams had been blank, her head kept bobbing, neck snapping, and all she could recall was watching a rush of dark shapes coming for her. Jesus Christ, a guy a few rows down muttered. People filed out for a bathroom/smoke break. The driver was rooted to his seat, coughing so painfully that Kate could easily visualize his lung slapping meat heavy against the windshield. No one asked if he was okay on their way out. Kate didn't see the point in getting up. She shifted uncomfortably, jeans chafing her thighs. God, it was hot. She was sweating from every cranny and it was only 9 p.m. She wasn't getting back into town until 11, maybe midnight. That meant sneaking in and trying not to wake her roommate, so no shower till morning. Sorry. Kate blinked up at the guy in the seat in front of her. Sorry, she said. Classic Canadian roundabout. The guy held up his phone. You wouldn't happen to have an Android charger, would you? He waggled his cracked screen behemoth at her. Before even thinking about it, she rummaged in her bag. Oh yeah, sure. She passed it over. Growing up in a house full of loud cousins at Nana's had conditioned her to share automatically, even against her will. A flash of, what if you don't get it back, pinged through her. Immediate regret for trusting so easily, but he'd already taken it. Thanks so much. The guy had turned back to face her. God, I'm not in a chatty mood. Where are you headed? Brandon. Kate was awful at small talk, awful at interactions that were planned months in advance, but she remembered to be polite. You? Going all the way, the guy huffed. Vancouver. Kate shuddered. I've only been on this bus an hour and I want to die. He laughed. Yeah, it's a long haul. He drummed his fingers on the seat. Kate felt her chest contracting, unsure what to say next. He was cute, but she didn't know the steps to this dance. The doors clapped shut again. Off we go, the cheerful guy chirped. Thanks again for the charger. I'll give it straight back. Sure. Kate quickly looked back out the window, thumbing in her headphones. The sun was already setting and shadows grew long claws past the Tims as they pulled away. She thought she saw... The driver erupted in a coughing fit so bad that suddenly the bus pulled over to the side of the road. The passengers were silent. Finally, someone, not Kate, asked, Are you okay to drive, man? He took a racking breath. Kate saw him turn around and grin weakly at everyone, sunken cheeks deepening. He looked like death. Sorry, folks, he rasped. Haven't been able to take a sick day in a while. Soon they were back on the road, heading for the exit to number 1 West again. As they sped up and changed lanes, Kate realized her heart was hammering behind the locket there. The locket felt warm. Kate forced herself to look out the window after exchanging a glance with the guy in the seat ahead. In the distant sky, the full moon was rising. Kate dreamed. Be careful, Nana was saying. Kate was small again, but her mind was still its 23-year-old self. They had been shelling peas in Nana's tremendous garden, a place of wonder and of poisonous things. Kate had plucked a flower. Hensbane, Nana called it. If you don't know what it is, don't eat it. Caution will save you. Canniness will protect you. Kate raised the flower to her. Is this what killed you? Nana shook her head. I had my time, child, but I went into death's arms gladly, she said. That's not to say I didn't avoid him many times over. She passed little Kate the locket. It was copper, faded, and tarnished from years of being held tight. Nana always wore it. She said it kept her from harm, that inside was something the world should never see again. She told Kate that one day, when she was done in this world, she would pass it on to her. The day she took it off, she died. Now she clasped Kate's chubby hand around it, clutching her old gnarled fists tight. They seemed to dry and crumble the longer she held on, but her eyes were intent. Do not let him have it, Nana said. The garden faded. Kate was running. She had been aware of things on 6 claw legs skittering after her, mouths huge and hungry. Come away, O human child. The darkness rushed by. Ahead, a silver procession of gauzy men and women astride horses passed in front of her. She tripped and flew right through them, the tinkling of musical laughter over her head as she landed in the dirt. They turned their gaze on her, revealing empty sockets. Their mouths slackened and they decayed as she watched. To the waters and the wild. The woods were all around her now. The boles of trees loomed skyscraper high, choking out the world. A prison closing in, the moaning screams of a fearsome rage at her heels. She got up to run, but tripped again, gasping, trying to pull herself away from the brink of a chasm at her feet. The chain's locket at her throat tightened as someone caught it, pulling her back, choking out her life. When Kate woke, the bus was dark. The world outside was dark. She couldn't tell where they were, but she'd only shut her eyes a moment. Her heart struck her ribs and her chest burned. She couldn't move. All she could hear was the driver's violent coughing and some passenger chatter at the front of the bus. She felt the air crackle. Was she still dreaming? As if underwater, the guy with her phone charger turned around and looked at her. She watched his eyes widen, saw his lips move, but couldn't quite make out the words. Her neck whipped to one side as the world suddenly swerved, and she was thrown ragdoll limp across the aisle as the bus caromed off the exit ramp. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. I was talking, when David and I were talking the other night, he mentioned this gorgeous cover art. Because I got a Zoom background, I can't really give you a good picture of the cover. Oh, good. Yeah. Okay. So you can see, so David's got it there. Look at that gorgeous cover art. It's got a bus on it, and would really like to know if the cover, this gorgeous cover designed by Relish Design here in Winnipeg, whether that was inspired by Sam's story, which is the first story. So thank you. Okay, well, we'll move on. David and Darren, you can let us know when it's your turn. David Yon Fuller is a Winnipeg writer and editor. At his day job, he is a copy editor at the Winnipeg Free Press. He holds a BA Honors in Theatre from the University of Winnipeg and studied Icelandic language and literature for 2 years at the University of Iceland in Reykjavik. In addition to Parallel Prairies, his short fiction has appeared in On Spec magazine, as well as anthologies such as No Shit, There I Was, Tesseracts, volume 17 and 18, Long Hidden, Kneeling in the Silver Light, and in French translation in a publication I don't think I can pronounce, but I'll try, Tinabi, 2017. Okay, David, you can correct me right away. David will read from his story. The comments gaze also into you. Welcome, David Yon Fuller.
I'm not sure I can correct you completely on that name of that anthology because I only communicated by email with the person, but I think it's Ténèbres 2017 perhaps. But it's Ténèbres 2017. My Icelandic is better than my French. All right, I'm going to read from the comments gaze also into you. I never set out to be a hero. In fact, it was the newspaper now posting this that started all that. And it's part of the reason my career is over. I just called my avatar the Herald, no relation to the Winnipeg Herald. There's a deeper reason for it, but of course my enemies online and in life only want to tear me apart for superficial things. I suppose if I'd called out myself the Star, people would assume I'd been inspired by the Winnipeg Star. Would they want to kill me as badly then? But never mind, it's over now. You few out there who really care, no, I won't name you. I know you'll want to comment on this before the pixels are dry, but good luck with that. You can rejoice or be sorry you won't have the Herald to kick you around anymore. For obvious reasons, I'll skip going over the what I do in real life, where I work, how I live, what I associate with. I never trusted the worst of you, and the trolls proved me right. I can tell from this newspaper's coverage over the last year and a half that what they really want, because it's what they think their readers crave, is an origin story. That would fit the narrative of the superhero if I had a dramatically appropriate tale. But the truth is, I've always hated assholes, and that's about it. The fact that I can do what I do is beside the point. I could have used my talent to become rich, I'm not, or famous. Does infamy count? But the fact it seems to work in the nebulous world online, not just in person, is what gave me the opportunity to make a difference. I'll admit, I also wanted to scare the hell out of bad people, just like the flashier cape-wearing vigilantes you've read about in comic books. I'm not sure now whether I did, really, and that's what led to it all going to shit. So, an origin story? Try this one on for size. In the comment sections of too many media sites in this prairie town, I saw a few people spending most of their time trying to hurt others, and I got sick of it. I created a new username, an avatar. Ta-da, the Herald. No, I won't tell you how I came up with that pseudo-medieval face, red hat, and blue collar, and I decided to take on the trolls. Let me add, since it's the subject of endless speculation, no, I didn't go after people I merely disagreed with. I didn't even care whether they were violating the commenting policies of the sites I found them on, but that would mean going after a lot more people. The first time I killed a troll, virtually anyway, was when I was just about ready to log off for good. Didn't matter which sites in this wonderful and diverse, but also hateful and xenophobic city I went to, I saw the same toxicity. Thousands of comments, usually by a minority of users, often on multiple sites under different handles, but with surprisingly similar patterns of idiom and axes to grind that attacked everything. Yes, I read that study on trolls and sadism. It wasn't news to anyone who's been their target. I decided to live by the new wisdom. Never read the comments. Logical argument? Spirited debate? Please. Even the moderated sites were bogged down in shouting matches, and the unmoderated ones were a troll sandbox. I had had enough. But a good friend of mine in real life knew what I could do. Had seen me do it from the time we were kids. I can't explain it, but I've always been able to suggest things to people. Most often I just ask quietly for them to tell me the truth. I have to be very direct, and Lord, didn't that ability make junior high even more of a minefield than it should have been. You don't know temptation until you're 13 and you can find out what people really think about you or anyone else, straight from the horse's mouth. And yes, I can hear all you confident, I don't care what people think heroes. In my experience, you either already hear enough how awesome you are that the stings of criticism just bounce off your force field, or you were among the most desperate to find out. Who do you think started coming to me all the time when word got around I knew the score better than anyone else? That's right, all those paragons of I'm the best and I'm beyond caring about such petty things. And I'm not psychic, by the way. I think that would have driven me insane. Anyway, my friend, and no, I won't tell you my friend's gender here, or mine, even though my many nemesis couldn't keep themselves from endlessly theorizing, suggested as an experiment that I try the same thing online. I'm going to leave it there for tonight. That's my 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, David. This is absolutely wonderful. I so appreciate our guests tonight, as well as all of our audience members. The purpose of the Manitoba Book Jam is to celebrate Manitoba books and authors, and to also raise awareness amongst Manitobans of our wealth of talent right here at home. And we have a wealth of talent right here in this room tonight. So we're moving on to about the halfway mark of our program. I know it doesn't look like the halfway mark on the half hour, but we have a little gabbing to do at the end. So our halftime musical guest is Alana Lewandowski. Alana Lewandowski is a Manitoba-born songwriter, recording artist, and producer. Growing up in a church that sang gospel music, where she got to sing out at least twice a week, naturally inclined her toward roots music. For 10 years, Alana toured internationally as an alt-country roots singer-songwriter. Her second album was produced by Ken Nelson, who produced the first 3 Coldplay albums, by the way. In 2010, Alana underwent a dark night of the soul that she sees as a reorientation toward her truest calling, that of the marriage between her spiritual seeker's heart and songwriting. She has a sincere love of all the mystics and the Celtic monastics, reaching all the way back to her pre-Christian Celtic and Slavic roots. Alana now calls the music she makes contemplative roots music. Some listeners have described Alana as the love child of Emmylou Harris and a desert ABBA, which gives you an idea of what to expect. Welcome, Alana Lewandowski.
Thank you. So I thought I would play a song that I'll be releasing a video for right away. I released this video that I produced here on our farm. I live by Riding Mountain National Park, just outside of Onanol in Manitoba. I lived in Winnipeg for 12 years at one point. So familiar with all of the names that everyone's reading out and of places and things. But I produced this thevideo for New Year's called Ring Out Wild Bells. And I kind of went in this steampunk themed direction. And coming up, I'm going to be releasing another one where I dress up again. And I'm sort of incorporating 3 of my egos inside of myself. And one of them is the rebel rocker. And the other is I'll be dressed up like a sort of a Roman citizen and sort of someone who's tied to empire. and then my last character will be Mary Magdalene, who's one of the most misunderstood, silenced characters in history. So each verse kind of represents each of those egos. So. My heart has made me a wild child. The fire, it burns out of control. Don't give me rules. Don't say I must. I'm what happens when love meets dust. There's a longing down inside, and this longing never dies. It can destroy or it can trust, but it's what happens when love meets dust. My heart has seen behind the walls of palaces and royal halls, 1 foot in mercy, still one in lust. I'm what happens when love meets dust. And there's a longing down inside, and this longing never dies. It can destroy or it can trust, but it's what happens when love meets dust. My heart's been empty, filled by you. You flow through me and suffer with the heavy laden, with the untouched. I am what happens when love meets dust. And there's a longing down inside, and this longing never dies. It can destroy or it can trust, but it's what happens when love meets dust. You sowed this flame inside of us. We are what happens when love meets dust. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Alana. Did you have another one for us? I haven't been keeping track of the time. I think you have a little more time. I mean, if you don't, that's fine. But if you have another one, that's
okay. Let me think here.
There's no pressure. If you want us to move on, we can.
Yeah, I was actually thinking I was prepared for one, and I'm just trying to think of what some of my stuff is. It's appropriate for certain audiences, and then maybe not for others. But I could probably do another one that's actually it sounds a little bit similar to this. It's a fingerstyle tune. This is I actually wrote this in a little cabin, 3-season cabin in Gimli, Manitoba in 2010. And I was kind of hiding out there after I left the music business.
You were also renovating it, weren't you? I seem to recall
that?
we had a conversation. You were also renovating it, weren't you? I think we had a conversation about that. Okay.
Yeah. I sold all of my performance, everything. I sold everything, and I was fixing up a cabin in Gimli and working. I was landscaping, and I wrote this song. When the desert called my name, it echoed near and far. There I was ashamed, out under the stars. Well, she looks lost and lonely, said the sand dune to the ghost.
but you find your way, make no mistake, when the desert calls your name. In the absence of the raindrop, in the deepening dark, I felt your silence all around, the thirsting of my heart. Well, she looks lost and lonely, said the sand dune to the ghost, but you find your way, make no mistake, when the desert calls your name. Well, it's been said that it's a lucky dark if you find yourself there. So I'll thank my lucky stars and try to be real brave, just like a Bedouin child. Well, sure, I'm lost and lonely, like the sand dune and the ghost, but you find your way, make no mistake, when the desert calls your name. You get to start out for the promised land, when the desert calls your name.
Thank you, Alana. That was very gracious of you to play a second. All right, well, a reminder again that today's program is free, but our writers would certainly appreciate your picking up their books either from the library. You can request a book if it's not in inventory, or a bookstore, perhaps with the McNally Robinson gift certificate we will draw for at the end of tonight's jam. Please stick around. You must be in attendance to win. These authors tonight are all featured in the collection Parallel Prairies, which is available at McNally's and every fine bookstore, and ebook, as Sam said, in various places. But several of our authors are also novelists, and I'll be sending out links in the next couple of days to other publications that you may be able to get a hold of. It's now my pleasure to hand over introductions to my co-host this evening, Danielle Somack. Take it away, Danielle.
Okay, yeah. Hello, everyone. So everything has been great so far. I'm really loving it. Okay, Adam Petrash is a writer from Winnipeg. He is the co-editor, alongside Darren Ridgley, of the speculative fiction anthology Parallel Prairies, Stories of Manitoba Speculative Fiction, and author of the indie novella The Ones to Make It Through. His work has appeared in the anthology Fitting In, Historical Accounts of Paranormal Subcultures, and in places such as After the Pause, Cheap Pop, Devolution Z, Phantasmagoria 2, Lemon Hound, Spacecraft Press, Whiskey Paper, the Winnipeg Free Press, and other publications. Adam will read from his story, Insectum. Welcome, Adam.
Hi, thank you for that introduction, Danielle. A little background on my story. It's based on a true story. I don't think I'll have time to get to the true part of it, but it was a lot of fun to write for this collection. All right, Insectum. Mark stared at the cabin in front of him. Neglected for years, the building was in dire need of repair. The eaves were filled with debris and covered with moss. The roof was tattered and needed replacing. The paint peeled and weathered after years of harsh Manitoba winters. It was a fixer-upper, but his grandfather had left it to him. It was his now, for better or worse. His grandfather had bought the land, building on it shortly thereafter when he first emigrated from Australia back in the 50s. His grandfather had moved out there permanently after the death of Mark's grandmother, stayed there until he had fallen too sick to be on his own, and he was put into a home. He never made it back before he passed. Mark's parents were too busy with their careers to put any time or effort into a humble little shack. So no one had been out there to tend, and it showed. "This is your cabin," said Beth. Her lips snarled upwards as she stepped out of the car with Molly, her Yorkie, cradled in her arms. "Sure is." Mark stepped onto the shifted steps, wobbling as he tried to balance their luggage and open the door, but when he turned the lock, it didn't budge. "The jam must have shifted," he said, putting his shoulder into it. The door swung open with such a force that it stirred the dust inside. Mark launched into a coughing fit, his lungs agitated by the stuffiness of the room. "See, no problem." Beth stared. "Well, come on then." Inside, the curtains were drawn over all of the windows. Mark fumbled for the switches on the breaker and hit the lights. Beth screamed. "What? What is it?" He turned to see Beth. "What are those?" Mark looked to where Beth was pointing. The walls were lined with picture frames. Inside them were all different kinds of preserved insects. The shelves were lined with books on the subject, old ant farms and specimens preserved in jars of liquid. "Oh, that, sorry, I should have mentioned that. He was an entomologist, loved insects, collected them from all over the world." "It's creepy," she said, bending over to put Molly down. Mark scanned the room, feeling only nostalgia for the many summers he had spent here. His grandfather teaching and quizzing him all about the different species of insects he had kept when he saw the broken glass on the floor. "Don't put Molly down yet. There's broken glass here and I'll need to pick up the rat poison first. It could kill her if she gets a hold of it." Beth righted herself and held on to Molly tighter. "What? There are rats in here?" She babied that dog, said she'd rather Molly have a personality than be well behaved, but this meant that she chewed everything at floor level. Fallen paper and pens, shoes. Mark thought it was cute at first too, but the novelty quickly wore off when he found tooth marks in his new pair of Allen Edmonds. "No, there shouldn't be. It's just a precaution. Wait here." Mark grabbed the broom and dustpan out of the closet and swept up the pieces of broken glass. He saw that one of the many ant farms his grandfather had owned was broken. It was about the size of a large aquarium and had long cracks that ran parallel to any empty tunnels housed within. Mark put his fingers into the exposed dirt and inspected it. It was bone dry and absent of any nutrients whatsoever. He figured it must have shattered from one of the many cold winters. Anything living would be long dead by now. He then found the old container that housed the poison and began combing through the rooms, being as thorough as possible, peeking in the nooks and crevices for the teal-colored cubes. Once, when he was little, he had come out there for a weekend with his family and his grandfather's dog, Bugger. Bugger managed to find a missed cube, had chewed it up into gnarled little pieces. He remembered his grandfather had to force a whole bottle of hydrogen peroxide down Bugger's throat to induce vomiting. To avoid a repeat of that situation, he continued checking, double checking again until he got to the last bedroom where he saw a small heap of fur tucked in one of the far corners. There lay 2 dead rats, ossified, the flesh looking like it had been chewed. Maybe that's what the poison did to their insides, he thought. Mark remembered his grandfather telling him about all the rodents looking for a warm place to hibernate and survive the cold winters. Squirrels in the old cast iron stove, or rabbits under the floorboards. His grandfather said these things were commonplace if you lived out here. Not wanting to scare Beth any further, Mark used the side of the pail and scooped the dead carcasses inside, closing the lid. He was sweating now from his cleaning and scavenging work, surprised by how warm the cabin felt, for not having any kind of running heating source. He never remembered it quite being like this. And I'm going to leave it like there. Thanks.
Okay, that was great. So now I'll introduce the next. So, Darren Ridgley is a journalist and genre fiction writer residing in Winnipeg. He co-edited Parallel Prairies, Stories of Manitoba Speculative Fiction. His work has also appeared in the anthologies Endless Apocalypse, fitting in historical accounts of paranormal subcultures and memories of the past, as well as publications including Mad Scientist Journal, Empire Romy, and Polar Borealis. Darren will read from his story, A Fistful of Wool. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you, Danielle. So this story is also based on a true story
sort of. It's based on a paranormal experience my grandfather had. We're going to be starting about halfway through. So to catch us up, our protagonist, Dawn, has returned to her hometown of Alana, Manitoba, to find out why her sister has melodramatically moved back in with their parents after breaking her leg and is treating it like a life-threatening injury. Sister Nellie has informed her that if she sings a childhood song that's connected to a stranger they met in childhood, she will learn the truth. Dawn sat back at the same table she and her father had occupied the day before. She considered trying it out in the field somewhere, away from prying eyes. But her gut warned her not to be entirely alone during the attempt. And if this worked, she didn't want it happening at home. She waited until the staff was occupied in the kitchen. She kept her eyes on the table. Nellie had said to be looking down when it started, and sang, "Hey, hey, hey, old Jack Gray, won't you come and make your way to make my wishes all come true and let the chase begin." She looked up and there he was, sitting in the corner, his back turned. A great gray overcoat, the one she remembered, was draped over his shoulders. But now, having grown up herself, she realized just how thin he was and how his scant frame made the coat seem that much bigger. His hair was as black as it had been when she met him all those years ago. "Aren't you going to come sit with me, Dawn?" he said, the words oozing from his throat. Dawn stared at him a moment longer and winced. She looked at her palm to see she dug her fingernails through her skin, little lines of red marking their place. Her ribs started to nag her for the first time since she was a child. She rose from her chair and took small steps until she was seated in front of him. He looked like a normal person, which surprised her. She'd had years to mutate his features in her mind, so his ordinary looks felt almost anticlimactic. His mustache was as black as the hair on his head, and the bags under his eyes suggested he didn't sleep much. He could have passed for any middle-aged farmer in the area if it weren't for the alarm bells blaring deep within her, making it clear she was not safe. An oblivious server came by with 2 empty mugs and a pot of coffee, right on time. Jack Gray motioned for them both to be filled. He gulped his as soon as it was set down. She watched the muscles in his neck move as he drank, forcing down the hot liquid. When he was done, he motioned for a refill. She couldn't tear her eyes off him to consider the mug in front of her. Finally, she found some nerve. "You did something to my sister," Dawn said. "Whatever it is, whatever this is, I want you to stop." "I didn't do anything to or for your sister that you didn't agree to. But then I'm guessing she didn't tell you the whole story." Dawn nodded. "But I'm betting after singing that song and calling me here, you're a little more open-minded." She nodded again. He drank the second half of the cup in one mouthful. Trails of dark brown fluid trickled out the side of his lips. "Your sisters sang that song not even believing it would work. I have Bloody Mary to thank for that. You kids and your summoning rituals, you don't even know what's real and what's not anymore." Jack scoffed, pushing the mug away with his fingertips. But when she saw I was there, she knew exactly what she wanted. Which was to surpass you. Kids are so fickle and jealous. A completely typical case of a younger sibling's envy of the elder one. You were taller and stronger and quicker on the draw intellectually. And you were the firstborn, which brings with it a certain household status. So with power-ups go, it was easy. A wave of my hand and her muscles got a little bigger. Her asthma disappeared. Her IQ went up 20 points. Immediately, she was ahead of the game. And as long as she kept up the good work, it would stay that way. The knowledge made Dawn angry. Nellie's grades skyrocketed around grade 3. She became more athletic. From middle school on, she was bringing in gold medals left and right, all to show her up. All this time, Dawn had felt outclassed by her younger sibling and had resented her for it. And now she knew that success hadn't even been earned. Nellie had rigged the system against her. But then what about the present? But Nellie didn't stay successful. He hasn't competed in over a decade. That doesn't sound like the deal you made. Jack defensively shook his head and wagged a bony finger at her. Not my fault. You humans, you're too complacent. I didn't make her stop competing. If she'd kept it up, she'd have been Olympics material for sure. But like all kids, she changed her dreams once she got older. She wasted her gift. Now the time has come to collect. About that, I said I was supposed to get you to stop from collecting something. Jack considered that for a moment. Then his eyes went wide and he laughed a loud, booming laugh, startling the server at the register. Oh, that's good. Illuminate me. Dawn's posture grew more relaxed as her initial fear of him waned. Do you even know what I am? I don't know if I care. I'm just trying to help my sister. Oh, you ought to care. What your sister is asking of you very much concerns you. Jack reached out and brushed her cheek with his finger before she could react. In a moment, her mind was flooded with fear, pain, and an aching, bottomless loneliness. Her hands gripped at the surface of the smooth table but found no purchase. Several of her nails broke in the effort to grasp it. She contained a scream and instead released a heavy sob. The server made a move for their table, but Dawn shot her hand up to wave her off. Her mind tried to find a word for what she felt. You're the devil. No, a devil. Well, an angel technically, but devil works. I think that's my time.
Wow, okay, that was really good. I like that a lot. Okay, so next. Craig Russell writes short stories, novels, plays, and probably a whole lot more we don't know about. His most recent novel, Fragment, was selected by Yale University for their 2017 climate fiction reading list. His novel, Black Bottle Man, received the Moonbeam Gold Award for YA fiction, and his stage adaptation of that novel was performed at the 2019 Acts of Faith Theater Festival in Richmond, Virginia. His play, The Unintended Consequences of Love, was performed at the 2006 Carol Shields Festival of New Works, and his play Donation was performed by Saravati Productions in 2018. Craig's short stories have appeared in Parallel Prairies, Great Plains, Polar Borealis magazine, and will appear in the upcoming Titanic Terrace Structures. Craig is a retired lawyer and former district register of land titles for the Manitoba government. Craig will read from his story, Anne Blaine. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks. The library is closed, ma'am. Anne looks up from the yellowed pamphlet she'd been studying for the past hour. A young woman, about the same age as Anne's own daughter, stands across the table from her. A tag gives her name, E. Mason. Blonde and soft-spoken, her clear gaze leaves Anne feeling tongue-tied. Sorry, found this inside the Britannica. Anne holds out the folded paper. It's handwritten, and the text is awfully hard to make out. That's all right, ma'am, the librarian says. Let me scan your faculty badge, and you can reserve it for tomorrow. Oh, I'm not a professor. 1 second, here. Anne produces her student card. The young woman passes her hand over the ID. Welcome to the University of Manitoba, Ms. Blaine. May I have the item? Thanks. I'm so excited to be here. I really like your library. The Elizabeth Defoe is one of a kind. The woman turns the paper over twice. That's odd. There's no title, author, or catalog number, and no RF tag. I've been trying to decipher the text, Anne says. Hard to imagine people ever wrote like that, isn't it? Looks like a steel nib, the young woman smiles. Sort of my specialty. Pre-Victorian written texts. This looks quite old. Where did you find it again? Inside the Encyclopedia Britannica. Anne carefully pulls over the heavy volume. Here, you can see the market left on this page in the P volume on the entry for pitcher plant. Yes, I see. The 1768 edition. I've never seen such an old encyclopedia before. I used to read the ones at school when I was a girl, Anne explains. It doesn't look like this one's been open for a long time. No, I suppose not. The librarian returns the pamphlet to the inside of the book. Look, can you hold on for a minute? My link can't identify the document's place in the collection, and I have to call my supervisor. Mr. Phillips has a parchment look, and Anne can see from his coat and hat that he'd been caught on his way home. Quid hoc est, the man says to the young woman. Anne isn't sure if he's just the sort of academic who actually prefers Latin, or if this is meant to keep her in the dark. An uncatalogued item, sir. He turns to Anne. Found by? I'm a mature student from Brandon. My kids are grown. I thought I'd finish my... Yes, yes. His tone suggests that she ought to have better manners than to find anything out of place in his library. It won't be available for students for quite some time, if ever, and certainly not until you've left us. It sounds like he thinks expulsion is more likely to be her fate than graduation. The inconvenient mystery is handed over to Miss Mason. Archive this tomorrow, Elizabeth. The next day, Anne sees the young woman puzzling over the pamphlet in a windowed, staff-only workroom. Her friendly tap on the window brings a shake of Miss Mason's head. Clearly, Mr. Phillips' instructions are taken seriously here. Then the man himself appears and the window blinds drop like guillotines. The snub hurts more than she'd like to admit, and Anne retreats to find a cup of solace at a nearby canteen. Fortunately, she had the forethought to take photo shots of the pamphlet before she was interrupted the previous night. The first line starts, "A mound, secret and sacred, waits in northern Manitoba." And so, though she's 60 and not really one for adventures, she decides she can set her studies aside for a day or two. But no tourist guidebook shows her a mound at the location described, and no roadway even passes nearby. Online, the few places that dot the area are shown as abandoned. She supposes the villages disappeared when a mine went broke. The evaporation of small communities is a common enough occurrence on the prairies. Her new roommate, Georgie, is a sweetheart and lets her borrow her Land Rover for a drive in the country with a promise to return in 2 days. And although she had intended to keep the promise, it was soon long past due.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Danielle. Great job. It was wonderful having you hosting and introducing some of our guests. Oh my gosh, you guys. Okay, if anybody was looking at me, and they weren't, they were looking at you, thank goodness, as you were reading. But if anybody happened to pass their eyes over me, I was smiling in inappropriate places. I would just like to explain. I was smiling because your readings just brought back the memory, the experience of when I was reading your stories. I love the fact, I mean, the stories are so imaginative, and some of them made me jump, and some of them freaked me out, and some of them made me laugh. But I love the Manitoba settings, that, you know, just the familiarity and the different take. Oh yeah, I'll probably have some interesting dreams for some time to come. Well, and now all good things must come to a finish, at least for now. The pandemic has been an unwelcome guest that stayed far too long, and it's been hard on all of us and the book industry. The launches have been canceled, along with easy access to books in bookstores and libraries, especially during shutdowns. If you appreciated what our authors shared with you this evening, hop over to a bookstore in person if able. You will be in a couple of days, or order over the phone or online. If you are in Winnipeg, please consider supporting McNally Robinson Booksellers, which has always been the greatest support to our Manitoba authors. Look for Parallel Prairies, or another book or publication from one of our authors. Look for Alana's music through Spotify, through her website, alanalewandowski.com. And Alana, is it also at McNally's? No, so online, but you can find it through her website for sure. Okay, before we get to our draw, I want to do two things. Well, before we get to the draw, first of all, I have a bonus gift for one of our audience members, Mela Tilak. I see you there. You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you like, because I would like to explain why I have a bonus gift for you. Hi, Mela.
Hi.
I happened to notice before I had gotten any of the promo out, all I had done is set up a link to the Zoom registration on my website, and boom, you had already registered. So before, any information was out other than on my website, as to who our authors were, you had already registered, and I thought that was pretty amazing. So I would like to send you a copy of Parallel Prairies. So a little bonus gift for you. Oh, do you already have Parallel Prairies?
I do not. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, and you will enjoy it. Trust me. Okay, so thank you so much. And now we will, so you can mute yourself again now if you wouldn't mind, just for a moment. We can all unmute in a second. We are now going to do our draw. Here we go. I've got this fancy online program that you can't see until I share screen, which I'm looking for. More. Okay, where is share screen? Okay, Jonathan, help me out here. Do I have a share screen? Why can't I find it? Okay, well, you're just going to have to take.
It's in your, it'll be in the bottom green middle. It's like green arrow that points up. You might have to.
I see it. I do see it. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, here we are. Share. You can all see it now? I'm sure you can. Not if you can see it. Excellent. Okay, so I've got everybody's names. I went to everybody who registered, not our presenters, but I entered you in here. So I am now, you must be in attendance to win, so we're just going to make sure that you are here, but I am going to do the random name picker. Here we are. Who's it going to be? And the selection is... The winner is Tanya Stephenson. Tanya, if you are here, please unmute and say that you're here.
Hello.
Hi, wonderful. Okay, Tanya, I have your email address, so I will email you afterwards. We will get you an online code or a physical gift certificate. Now that things are going up, we'll work that out with you. So congratulations.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're absolutely welcome. Everybody, please feel free to unmute right now, because I'd like to generate welcome a little chaos. And first, and also a shout out to our Facebook Live audience members. Not everybody could make it into the Zoom room today. So let's all just cheer for Facebook. Facebook Live, guys. Hi. All right. Thank you all for being here. Our next jam will be February 18th. Stay safe, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
Thank you.
Anita. Danielle.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Anita.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.